All right, to Go for CEO channel, welcome back. But hey, have you ever thought how you can go from six-figure losses in business to seven-figure profits? Well, this gentleman, after you subscribe to the channel, by the way, this gentleman, Matt Putra, is the CFO who makes the math work. Matt Putra, thank you so much for coming to the Go for CEO channel. We love that you have founded EightX, a fractional CFO firm working with e-commerce, CPG companies all over the world. Thank you so much for being on the Go for CEO channel. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you so much for having me. That was a great intro, by the way.
Awesome, brother. Well, yeah, we're trying to captivate people, right? In audience, Go for CEO community. Stay tuned. This is going to be a great conversation. This industry of fractional CFO over the last 5, 10 years as a commercial banker that I do outside of YouTube has really been impactful with small to medium size and large businesses because they're realizing like, hey, I can take a talent like you, bring them into my organization at a fractional
Hmm.
time and not have to commit totally from all the benefits and the salaries and all the stuff that you guys do command a pretty big
Hmm.
benefits and salaries. So tell me about 8X and what you've been able to do from the perspective of ideation initially. How did you think of this opportunity? And obviously you had taken some other great companies from six figures to seven and beyond. So we'll
Yeah.
start with that.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't say I kind of came up with the concept and then executed on it. I'd say I more or less fell into it. Um, I was a CFO of a private equity group, and a very good friend of mine had a e-commerce business, and he said, "Hey, like, we're struggling with cash flow and a bit of margin, and can you help us for a little bit?" Okay, sure, let's do it. So I built them a financial model. We started doing some reporting. And then we started finding things. Oh, hey, did you know that if you shipped via boat, then rather than air, it would take longer, but you'd save X. And so they ended up saving 50 grand in the first year that I worked with them. And then I was like, hey, well, I found this opportunity. The data says this could work. And so we would try things. And so then I helped him. And then he was like, hey, can you help another friend of mine? I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Helped a friend of his. And then he started an agency and he goes, well, I was thinking of doing a workshop. Can you run a workshop about data and finance? I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Then I got a couple clients from this workshop. And so at first it was just working off the side of my desk. I was at a PE firm and just kind of working on weekends and evenings and so on. And then I started to realize there's probably something here. Other people had been doing this already, but I just came to it, right? And just started doing this. And then I talked about it on LinkedIn. And I was one of the earlier people on LinkedIn to talk about being a fractional CFO. So business exploded from there. And I quit my job in 2020, and it's been 5 years. It's been a wild ride, but now we're working in the UK, Canada, Australia, USA, some Europe, helping people grow the businesses.
It's interesting, right? You took an opportunity and kind of from a standpoint of, hey, you were giving and giving and giving right at
Yeah.
the beginning,
Hmm.
and sounds like you didn't really charge anything because it was buddies of yours, and you were kind of learning this space a little bit, like, oh, maybe I could do this for other firms. So that turning point, from being an entrepreneur inside of the PE company to
Hmm.
becoming an entrepreneur, what was that like? I'm sure there was maybe some heavy decisions. I know off camera we talked about your son and
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and the family that you have. So,
Yeah.
salaries to going zero. What was some of those dynamics to make sure that 8X could start its flight and journey?
Yeah. So it was a little scary, to be honest, and I talked to my wife and I said, and for years, I'd been trying to think of something to do to have a business. Just because I wanted to prove that I could do it. Don't know to who, but I just wanted to prove that I could do it. And um, then I started making some money. It was, I don't know, 5K a month at some point, 6K a month. I was like, I gotta go all in on this. I want to try this. I was helped along with COVID because I was commuting to my downtown 1.5 hours each way, so 3 hours of commute time a day. I missed dinners at home for 2 years, but I have 4 kids now, so I missed dinners at home for about 2 years with these three little babies. And then COVID happened, and I got all this time back, and I was like, "Oh, this is what I'm missing," and I can't go back to that. So we said, "Let's try this," and we looked at our bank, and we said, "When the money gets to here, we're gonna move to like Colombia or Buenos Aires or somewhere very cheap to live, and then refigure it all back out and then come back if that worked. And as it turned out, I replaced my income in about 3 months. I doubled it about 6 months after that, and it hasn't always stayed doubled, as you know, in business. But yeah, it was pretty scary, but it came back pretty fast, to be honest.
Well, that's an interesting twist. I haven't heard someone that said that they'd move out of where they were. So where were you with that PE company? And
Yeah,
gosh, man, 3 hours of your life community is no easy task. And God
yeah,
bless you for doing that. But
yeah.
that obviously spurred under the saddle to be able to get this going on 8X. So what
Mhm.
was that like? Did you actually then end up moving to one of these outside countries to
No,
establish yourself, or?
no, the money worked. So
Okay.
so we live in Vancouver, Canada, and it's like other places in the US. Some of them are very expensive. It's expensive here. And I just said, look, I have to try this. I can't go the rest of my life just working for somebody. I want more flexibility. I want to travel. I want to work. I want to, all these things. My wife, luckily, she's as crazy as I am, to be honest. Like this would not work without her. I have friends who are entrepreneurs and they're sitting on piles of cash, and they're between the two of them, the dynamic is that they can't try something, right? And my wife was always like, try it. If we
Do
have
it,
to
do it.
move, she's like,
Yeah.
just fucking go. If we have to move, I'll move. If we got to go to wherever cheap, we got to go to Bali for a year to live really cheap, I'll do it. All of it's fine. So to her credit, this would not work without her. But we didn't end up having to move. Like my income went up very quickly from when I started. And probably not everybody's story, but for us, it worked out really well. And then we've had some hard times and some months where there was losses and things since then, but it's worked out.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting, right? So you go from that perspective of an entrepreneur, which I think
Yeah.
that's what was really propelling you, right? A lot of people don't realize that as they're working for someone, they've always had this itch, this
Yep.
thing, or within the company, which is okay if you stay in it, but you owned it. Like it seemed like you were already kind of owning your position, owning your way that you did business. So, all
Yeah.
right, now the first few months, you said in the first 60 to 90 days, you'd already had obviously this kind of side gig, side hustle
Yep.
scenario where you helped a
Yep.
couple friends. What was that transition like? And then how did you start to figure out the name of the company, the way
Oh
that you
yeah.
were going to go to market? Did you just
Yeah.
use the network of those two initial side hustle
Yeah.
scenarios to then flourish to referrals? What were some of those dynamics?
Yeah. I didn't I wouldn't say that I planned a lot. I just sort of leaned into what was working. And on the name side, I'm a very bad namer. If you were to ask me to come up with a name for something right now, I would fail. So I was reading something on Instagram probably, and there was a Japanese proverb that said fall 7 times, stand up eight. And I was like, oh sweet, that my name is fucking eight. And I don't and then I was, oh, my name is 8X because it's the eighth time. And I was like, this is like entrepreneurship because you keep trying to figure this out. And then that last time it finally works. So like fall 7 times, stand up eight, that's the name. And then it's like stick a pin in it. I'm never talking about the name again. So that's how the name happened. And then in terms of go to market, dude, like like I said, I did a workshop with a friend, and then he's like, "Hey, you should post on LinkedIn." And I was like, "All right, cool, post on LinkedIn." And I just said, "Hey, the early days, the first year was all about just being helpful. So if you have this problem, try this step, 1, 2, 3 steps. To calculate your gross margin, you add this and you exclude that. To figure out what your net margin after all variable expenses are, you here's a spreadsheet, fill it in." And I just was helpful for a year, and I got so much business. I would say I grew. I mean, I don't know what I grew to exactly, but probably from 5K a month to roughly whatever 600, 700 grand a year in revenue in that first year, the run rate, and basically all from LinkedIn. And people would be DMing me, "Hey, can you do this for me?" Yeah, great. And my close rate was 50% that first year, probably. Um, and so there was no go-to-market planning. There was no like brands research. I just threw shit at the wall and tried to figure it out. And I did a bunch of dumb stuff too. Like we tried advertising once. There was like a there was a COVID loan in Canada, and I was like, "Oh, I could help people get this loan." And so we did some ads, and I got like, I don't know, 500 leads, and I worked 12 hours a day trying to figure it out. And it was the worst thing I ever did because it was like I hated the work, very low margin. people were, anyway, so we just tried stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's how I got to this point, basically. Just, well, we got more strategic 2 years ago, sure, but like honestly, muddling through, trying it out, asking people who are smarter than me, you know.
Now, did you already from that seminar that you did with your buddy that kind of transitioned the
Hmm.
mindset of it,
Yeah,
was it a clean break within 3 months of the PE, or did you kind of transition slowly and
great
then pick
question.
up business?
Yeah, it was slowly. So I gave them notice in, I believe, September of 2020. And I said, hey, I have to do this. Sorry. And they said, we knew you'd do it at some point, so we're not surprised. Okay, great. So they said, I was like, how much time do you want? And they said, how much time do you need? And I said, well, 6 months sounds okay. They're like, yeah, we can work with that. So over 6 months, we would go 2 months and then I'd drop a day and another month and I'd drop. So I kept just dropping days every month. At the end of the 6 months, I dropped all my days. But it would be the 30th. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm dropping a day next month, but I haven't got a client for that day yet. Like, well, how am I going to make that money? And I don't know, I just kept posting on LinkedIn, trying to be helpful and be nice, right? And I would drop a day and I'd sign a client, and I'd drop a day and I'd sign a client. And I was like, what the fuck? This is sorry, but I was like, this is nuts. You could just get work from being helpful and working hard. So it just worked out, I mean, surprisingly, and it's somehow still working out.
Well, it's the spirit of entrepreneurship, right? Is sometimes just throwing spaghetti on the wall and something sticks, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's having a really good process. I'm not a big astrological guy, but I remember talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about like, depending on when you were born, there's some things that are attributes and things that maybe, that are your background, your parents, all that type of stuff, the environment that you learn, right?
Yeah.
So, some people are structured and some people aren't. And I kind of gravitate to you as like sometimes I just throw stuff on the wall and it starts to work, and you're like, okay, well, I'll keep on doing that, right? Like that's where I want to stay on to. So interesting. Well, I love the 6 month process. A lot of people's,
Mhm.
cut the cord and go on their own and sometimes hurt themselves a little bit. And they
Totally.
recover sometimes. But I love that you were able to have communication with your PE company, tell them, hey, this is my perspective. Here's what my goals are. And then they
Mhm.
worked with you for a 6 month out transition. So now,
Yep.
how did you start billing, right? Because obviously you had a salary and you were paid
Sure.
what you were worth in some sort of metric from an
Yep.
HR perspective for the PE company. When you went on your own, were you doing retainers? Did you start to do hourly? Were you
Yep.
saying like, hey, I need a monthly stipend? Like what was the
Yep.
way that you modeled the revenue cycle for you?
Great question. So the only thing that I knew I wouldn't do is do hourly. I've never done hourly. I will never do hourly. We don't do it. Well, almost very, very rarely, unless it's like $1,000 or $2,000 an hour. So there's that. That doesn't happen very much. So the only thing I could promise myself was I would never replace like an hourly job like thing. So I said, what is something that is a no-brainer for someone to pay to get the help that I'm talking about? I started off billing people $500 a month, and I did a couple hours of work a month for them. And at $500 a month is nothing for someone to part ways with. So it got me a lot of yeses early on. Um, the first that was for the friends, right? $500. And then the first one I billed decent money to was probably $3,000 a month. Um, and then it started going three or no, 1,500. I started 1,500 British pounds a month there in UK. And then it went to 2,000 a month and 3,000 a month. And now, I mean, we have a client now that's 21,000 US dollars a month, right? But I just honestly, for me, I had read enough, I guess, to know that I need testimonials and I need work because I have to just get out there and do the thing. Then I'll get better at the thing. So while I was working, I built this, whatever would get someone to say yes. And then once I rolled out of my job, it was like, okay, I need to make some money, but I still need people to say yes a lot. So, like I say, 1,500 British pounds a month was probably at the time 2,500 Canadian or something like that. So we were probably 2 to 3,000 a month for the next little while. And then from there, we started racking up wins. And I could say, by the way, I can quantify this for you. If you bring me on, I'll probably find a win twice a year that's going to pay you that much and so on. So then I started raising my rates progressively. Honestly, probably one of the things I'm worst at is raising my rates appropriately and often. And we learned that lesson the hard way, still regularly, to be honest. I was told last year even, I said, I'm going to do this, this, and this for you, and you're going to feel this, this, and this way about it. And I said, it's going to cost you, what did I say with them? Uh, $4,000 a month. And they said, no way. I was like, what? What do you mean? They said, there's no way you can do that for 4K. The last person who did it for us was 7K. Fuck. And I was like, honestly, dude, I managed a private equity company that had not a big one, but we had 100 million AUM, assets under management that we managed for investors. We did 500 million in deals. I closed 20 deals all the way across Canada. And I said, I can do what I'm saying I can do. And they said, you know what? Go ahead, but please don't charge us 7 now. And I was like, all right, fine. So I did the job for them for 4K, turned their business around from minus 150,000 a month to 50,000 a month profit within the first 3 to 4 months we work with them. And then I started going, okay, I should probably do some market research to figure out what the fuck people are paying for this thing. So when now we charge appropriately, we're in the rank. It's still between 4 to 10K a month, but depending on the size. So
It's interesting. There's a guy named Alex Hermosi that's kind of a guru out there the last year or two. He's really kind
100%.
of blown up, and
Hmm.
he talks about supply and demand, right?
Hmm.
And you had that freemium model where you're on LinkedIn, you're sharing great content, great value. People
Hmm.
are intrigued by that. They haven't seen this before, or maybe they were intrigued by just the words that you use and the bars and the graphs or what have you,
Hmm.
and they started attracting to you, right? But you didn't know. You're like, all right, 500 a month, 1,500 a month. Oh, shoot, 3,000. Oh, wait, people are going to pay more. So
Yep.
it's interesting how that dynamic works in a kind of a sole proprietor mindset, right? Because you were trading hours for dollars before, and then you
Yep.
became self-employed, which is basically owning your own job. And now you
Yep.
started to convert into a business.
Yep.
So tell us that transition. And obviously, we didn't talk about this offline, but 8X, the brand itself and the company that you built,
Hmm.
were there also some opportunities that once supply and demand got a little bit out of whack and you needed to charge more, did you ever bring on anybody else? Do you sub
Oh
some
yeah.
stuff out or?
No, I have 25 staff now.
Okay.
But so how we transitioned, I would say, from yeah, a job to a business it was bumpy. So I am very good at strategy, high level thinking, and I bet you're the same as a commercial banker. And so I can talk to somebody, I can go, well, I know where your problems are, and I generally know how to fix them. I'm old now too, so it's kind of like been around the block, right? So I'm good at that. What I'm not good at is regular, boring, routine things that are still important, but like they just, on the first of the month you have to do this, and the 10th you have to send their. I'm not good at that stuff. So that started breaking for me. I would miss deadlines with clients on the easy things, but they would get a pass because we were still knocking out of the park on the hard things. Then I was like, okay, we got to do this well. So I should probably hire somebody, right? So I was like, well, let's find a Canadian kid who can be an analyst and make reports. So I hired a kid that I sort of knew, second hand, third hand connection. The guy, well, I shouldn't, I guess it was bumpy. I'm not an awesome people manager. And it was pretty bumpy. And I didn't create enough structure for this person for them to succeed. And so there was a day where I was traveling and um, it was midnight where I was, and I had a client call at 4 a.m. because of the time zone thing. And I texted him, it was whatever time, 9 a.m. for him. Texted him, I was like, hey, all the reporting ready? He goes, yep, sweet. Go to bed for a couple hours, wake up, reporting's not done. Heck. Anyway, and again, structure, it's my fault. So then I said, I am not going to be able to do the structure thing because I'm not good at that. So I got to find someone who knows what to do and how to make structure. So I hired a guy named John. And when John came on, I said, here's how I want things to work. And he just built checklists and processes, and he built the reports and the templates and all. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then I would go to bed and I'd wake up and John would have everything in my inbox ready for a client call. And I was like, holy shit, this could work. And John, if you're listening to this, I love you. He resigned this year to go chase some other dream, but he was with me for 4 years. We wouldn't have a business without him. And from there, I was like, wow, this could be a thing because now I don't have to do everything. So then from John, we added another CFO, then we had an assistant. Then now we have a team of 5 or 6 analysts, 5 or 6 accountants, a marketing manager, all kind of stuff. But with that first A player, to me, opened my eyes to what could really get done.
Yeah, and that's the scariest part, right? To a lot of people have this talent, baking cookies to being a CFO and knowing
Exactly.
numbers. You think, oh, I'm the thing. And really, to become a business, you have to be able to bring and attract those
Yes.
talents so that it could stop the gaps that you had, right? As you
Yes.
said, strategy is kind of your competency, your high level thing, but
Hmm.
punctuation and knowing how to cross the T's and dot the I's every
I'm
single
so
time
bad.
may not be as strong, right? So
No.
it's an interesting dynamic. So all right, so organizationally, you start to grow, you bring on a talent, and you start to see, oh, I could stretch this, right? So
Hmm.
what were some of the things that you battled from a growth perspective? When you think
Yeah.
about, all right, well, hey, I'm bringing in 70, $100,000 a month, but now I got to give up 8,000 or 10,000 or whatever it is to put those things parameters together. What were some of the things that from a CFO mindset, like that you were
Hmm.
thinking, okay, I could strategically bring in 3 people that command this type of salary, or did you use 1099 scenarios? Did you use
Good question.
only partial work scenarios? What were you doing to grow the staff?
So I was again early to the offshoring model. So what I learned from John. So I don't know how I don't remember how I learned this, but I was like, so I had a Canadian kid, and again, I it was my fault that it didn't work out, but it didn't work out. And I was like, I heard someone say, well, you could probably hire an analyst from Philippines or something, right? So I was like, great. So let's hire an analyst, pay them at the top end of what they could make there, or over the top end, and see how this goes. Well, let's try it, right? So John was from Manila, is from it. He's still there, of course. And he, like I say, incredible. He was a financial analyst and team lead for like Aon or yeah, Aon Insurance. So he'd fly around the world and training people. I didn't know what I got when I hired him. So hired him. He set up all of our processes, how often we review people, how they're benchmarked against like everything. Okay. And then I was like, oh my God, the quality. I mean, and I'm an idiot for thinking this at all, but like there are director level people everywhere, of course. But like you don't always think that when you're from North America. And so I was guilty of the same thing. I didn't think you could find that. So now I know that there are directors, senior people in all countries. So now we hire for merit no matter where you are. Um, so we started hiring from the Philippines. We've hired from Latin America. There's some Canadians, some Americans, but we hire from wherever. And one of the reasons for that was because I always wanted to be affordable to people. And this helped me stay fairly affordable to most entrepreneurs um, that needed what we could offer. And we could deliver that with profit for me because I couldn't make no money, right? Um, that's the question. Oh, and yeah, that was that sort of the question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it shows the transition, right, of how you started
Yeah,
to really
right.
multiply yourself and have that one dynamic person that really kind of changed the evolution of 8X and where
Hmm.
you started going and growing to. So, you mentioned a little bit about affordability. I'd love
Hmm.
to hear about, what that sense was and who is your target market or avatar, right?
Hmm.
I think you said, hey, we're throwing spaghetti on the wall and see if it sticks, and it starts to grow. You start to double your income within 6 to 9 months, and that was a very awesome thing. But what type of clients were you attracting? Was it
Yeah.
small business under maybe 10 million a year? Was it medium-sized business between 10 and 100 million in
Hmm.
gross revenue? Like where have these clients started to come from and evolve from?
Yeah, so where did we start with our ICP and ideal client profile? Where are we now? Yeah, so in the beginning, it was just people with e-commerce businesses typically. One of the reasons I like e-commerce was because they have a ton of data at their fingertips. So Facebook and marketing and website and so then you could break things down with a lot of data for them. Whereas your typical brick and mortar may not have the same level of data. And so I found it just sort of easier to give them insight because they had a lot of data. Also, the e-commerce community is a wonderful community to be a part of. I find it very uplifting. People are pretty chill. And so we started working on the smaller end of businesses. Really, again, whoever could afford 2 to 3K a month, which is not a lot of money. So I would say we had a sweet spot from like 2 to 10 million for a long time, and that worked. It's evolved since then. We worry less about quote unquote affordability now. We try to give away a lot of information and templates for to help those people who still need it. But now, what I always believed in was over serving, and I still believe the same thing. And so we don't. What's different about us than maybe other CFOs is we have processes and templates and things, but we white glove and customize everything for your needs. So where one company might, we have a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting and you get this, this, and this deliverables. We go, you're going to get all this, but then we're going to do whatever else you need to stay afloat. So for example, I was on the phone with a client half hour every day last week because they're in a cash crunch. I got to help them out of it. So we overserve and everything's fully customized. So then what I realized is if we're going to be heavily customized, and that's what I really believe in, I need to raise the rates, right? Because we're giving someone a lot of value. So now we have one client that's doing 100 million a year. We had a client doing 80 million a year, and I exited them to make room for full-time CFO, right? So that's a great growth arc for us. This company is doing 100 million. Their CFO left kind of suddenly, got in contact with me. Been there almost 2 years because we're really good at that size. Whenever someone's had a CFO full time and we step in, they love us every time. We crush it because we're fast, right? Because as a consultant, you have to give value quickly and regularly. As a full-time like W2, you don't get a pass per se, but you get more of a pass than a consultant does. And as a consultant, I don't get a pass. So I have to deliver value often and very quickly. And I gotta keep figuring out what's bugging the CEO, sorry, and I gotta keep fixing what's bugging him. And if I don't do that, I get fired. So I find that we crush for people that have had full-time CFOs. So we're moving up market, of course, like everyone wants to do. We still have a number of clients in that like 2 to 15 area. And to be honest, for the right ones, we love working with them, and we'll take less because uh, it is part of our core values to help these people grow their businesses to where they want to grow to with less stress. So
I love the takeaways there, right? The value that you have to continue to deliver from an entrepreneurial standpoint in your business, right? From a service perspective and consulting, this genre of era, you have to, yeah, almost like prove yourself on a daily basis, right? Because
yeah,
it is a line item that they could easily X out if they really wanted to. But it's obviously 8X and your value and the leadership that you provide to the clients that you have is that extreme value on a daily basis. Now, from a team standpoint, I'm going to track it back a little
sure.
bit. How have you been able to, impact your team to think like you? Or are you giving them leeway, but then oversight from a business, like you working on the business and saying, okay, hey, this guy or gal is tracking 5 clients. Do you input your style with them? What are you trying to do to make sure that the culture of the way you deliver things from a company perspective
hmm
stays relatively the same as when you first started by yourself?
Oh, fair question. Um, well, I only hire CFOs to work with me that were CFOs like live in a business, right? So I don't hire like accounting graduates or just because you've been in the big four audit role. Let's say I don't hire CFOs from those places. One of my CFOs was an industrial engineer first, then went to finance. The other one ran a 10 company e-commerce group in Australia. Another guy was a chartered accountant at one point, but then ran a $1 billion hotel chain. Somebody ran an airport, right? So, but they've all have industry experience. They've all been on the hook to like make sure cash works, like personally, right? So that's one thing. I find there's nothing wrong with hiring straight out of Big Four audit, but it's just a bit different, and it's not my flavor, right? So we hire CFOs that will own the results of our clients. Um, and then I write playbooks, right? So we have a playbook for the first 90 days of every client engagement. And what I've done is I've gone, this is generally what needs to get produced through this 90 days, but you have the flexibility to add or swap weeks depending on the client's pain. So if cash flow week is typically week 3, bring it to week 1 if they need it faster, or things like that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And then obviously I've set a structure. So we will meet people at least once a week, and we'll meet them for 30 minutes, and then we meet them an hour and a half, a separate time in the month to do a deep dive. And the deep dive should have these 15 pages in it, like a board pack, for example, a board reporting package. But you can add anything else your client needs, and you should. And so I've created a bunch of structure. And then I said, you have to think for yourself. So I've hired people who can think, of course. And I say, we're on Slack. You should be responding to people within a day, typically. And but if they're bugging you all the time, you should say, hey, like let's table that till the next time we meet, you know? So some structure, but again, because I believe in being white glove, I have to let them think and decide on their own. And I've just hired people that care a lot about people. So we don't have clients. We have Jim, who's got 2 kids, who his parents didn't have any money, but he has a chance to make it so his kids will always have money. Like that's who we're working for, you know? And my people understand that, and it's a very core value of ours. It's like, we work, John, like I don't know what your history, but we need to know where you've come from and what you want. Do you have kids? Do you have a kid with a disability that you have to leave a massive amount of money for them because when you're gone, we need to know that shit about our clients so that we can index heavily against their goals, basically.
No, there's so much things there, right? You being a guy that said that he didn't have structure, noticeably, you just
Right, I
said
guess
structure
so.
like 7 times.
Right, I
So
suppose.
and it's interesting, right? Because entrepreneurship got you to this level where
Mhm.
now, eloquently speaking, I mean, 5 years later, you're talking about it, right? You're talking about the SOPs. Now, obviously, you had a
Right.
great guy, like you said, in John, and he kind of developed some of these processes for you. But there's a guy named Ed Milet that I follow a lot, and
Yeah.
he talks about, entrepreneurship is the greatest learning and
Yes.
self-development system on earth. And
Yes.
that's kind of what it did to you, and the way that you're speaking and sharing
Yes.
your knowledge is
Yes.
why we get so excited here at Go for CO, because it's a mindset. It's driven by mindset, but it's also learning these things as you go. And as long as you don't quit,
This is
you
the
could have a
thing.
lot of success. So really
Well,
awesome stuff.
Hormozy said a few times in the last year, and what resonated on my feed is that, like, if you just survive, you will end up being one of the best. And for me, that's been true. Just white knuckling it. And I wasn't like, again, I did talk about structure, but in the beginning I wasn't good at it. It's not my natural flavor, but I realized
Yeah.
as we grow, I have to figure out how to do it. And this year it's been about becoming a better CEO and people manager, leader, manager, where
Well,
I, it's like you say, biggest learning experience of my life.
that is awesome, right? So tell us, from a marketing standpoint, I know that you really, you had this snippet in time where you said, "Hey, you spent some money on some ads. It didn't really work out. It was kind of
Hmm.
in a way having you do work that you didn't really enjoy, and on
Hmm.
top of it,
Hmm.
wasn't profitable
Hmm.
to that point." So what has that been now that you were so established over the last 4 or 5 years? What are some things that you're doing? Is it truly, do you have some sort of incentive program for referrals? How are you marketing, or do you let your people kind of network in the marketplace? What are you doing to attract more business at this moment?
Great question. I will say that I have spent over the last 18 months, I've wasted like 120 grand on cracking lead gen once and for all, because I have always wanted to have something that I could sell if I wanted to, and you can't if you do everything. And so for me, we figured out delivery. We know how to do the work. Great. But now we have to grow, and we have to grow if I'm sick or on vacation or whatever, break my, we gotta grow. So the last 18 months, I had a sales coach. I spent like 30K with a sales coach, and he did a bunch of good things. It was great. We tried cold email. We tried cold email 3 times, actually. We tried hiring somebody to take it over. We tried making a referral program. We all kind of things. And honestly, a lot of it didn't work. What we've come back to as of like literally 3 months ago is marketing on Facebook, Meta. So now I film ads. And obviously, we use Claude and AIs to write them, and we use our agency. We have a marketing agency, but but I film ads and we're testing offers and we're getting landing page visits and landing pages aren't converting. One is, one isn't. And so we're just learning. But we got, for the first time ever, we're getting an average of like 3 to 5 leads a week. And it's not dependent on how much energy I have. So this is a big step for us is now the next step will be hiring a sales closer. Um, and that's again, my next 6 to 9 months is focused on stabilizing the lead gen, getting a cost per lead that makes sense and an offer that resonates to a marketing audience. Then, which we think we're close to. And then now that when we get too many calls, it's like now I got to hire someone to take these calls. Once I have a lead machine and I have a closer, which will take 6 to 9 months to train properly, then my business will grow forever and I get to work more on the innovation client side. I don't want too many clients, but like innovation, building the work, making sure delivery makes sense, and troubleshooting. So I get brought in on other CFO have clients where there's like a big issue. They'll bring me in to say, how would you work on this and what would we do? And so that's where I really want to work is on the innovation troubleshooting.
Nate. Well, hey, look, you've definitely transitioned from on the or in the business to on the business, right?
Mm,
I can't wait to see and hear, right, the next 5 years, what
totally.
that looks like. And as you said, once you systematize some things, and then I added some lead generation components, right? Now you actually become also a multiple for PE companies to come and buy you or other competitors, or
That's the
maybe you
plan.
decide I want to grow and I want to buy other businesses, right? And to add there may be some strategy there. So, as we end our interview here, we typically go through CEO, right? So go for CEO. C is for client experience. And we're going to ask you here to share, 60-second, 90-second value proposition of what it means to deal with 8X and what you guys do.
Mm,
Engagement, which is, we've talked about a little bit, but I want to go deeper on how you engage with your vendors, engage with your employees, engage with your family. Like, what is it that brings Matt Putra to engage with other people? And then
mm.
O is operational excellence. And obviously, we've heard a ton of AI opportunities going on, and you just mentioned Claw and some of the things that you're doing from a operation standpoint and all the standard procedures and operating systems that you put together. So client experience, let's start with that. What is the true value proposition that 8X provides to a client experience?
You will feel like you have a partner in running your business if you work with us. You will get texts back at 10 p.m. You will get, if you're on a different time zone, we'll wake up at my 5 a.m. to be on a phone call. I got up, I was in Hawaii. I was up at 1 a.m. sitting in the hallway on a call because their investors needed something, right? You will feel like you have a partner, not a consultant who you can't reach half the time. And of course, we're very, very good at finance. So if you want a partner in your growth who's awesome at finance, that's what you're going to feel like.
Boom. All right. Awesome. Awesome. So, how about engagement? We didn't touch on it too much, but are you doing anything with your employees? Do you do maybe a quarterly, getaway? Do you do retreats with your clients? What are some ways that you engage with the people that you do day-to-day business with?
Yeah, so for certain clients, we visit them regularly. So I was going to London every 3 months for the last 3 years. And again, they've just exited to a massive market player and they brought in a full-time CFO, so I don't go there now. But I actually have two people from Buenos Aires here this week, my two senior team members. We're doing our offsite. But yeah, we just try to get together, ideally in person once a year, and then we do virtuals like quarterly.
Nice, nice. Well, I really enjoy that. I mean, I think a lot of times that E component is a differentiator, right, for
Mhm.
companies. And the ones that last have that engagement between vendors,
That's a good point.
suppliers, employees, even family, like bringing family
Mm.
around and your kids. I know some people out there that bring their sons, right, to events, and then they get to engage, and that humanizes you as a CEO
Oh,
and
that's a good
founder of a
point.
company, right? So it's
That's a
pretty
great
cool.
idea.
So last one is operational excellence. So you mentioned Claw and some of the AI tools. What are other things that you're using? If point of reference, maybe an ERP system or some other softwares that you're developed or maybe even internally developing.
I want to give you something I just figured out yesterday, and this is awesome. So I am working on my sales motion, and what we know about like ChatGPT is that you can't really tell it I need to work on my sales function, create everything I need to know, because you need to create playbooks and email templates and text templates and then a flow chart, and you need like probably 20 artifacts and SOPs, all these things, right? So it can't do that. It can tell you you need them all, but you can't sequentially build them. Enter Claude Code. So if anybody is slightest bit techy, just download Visual Studio or even cursor.ai, download that. Go to Claude's website and ask it how to install Claude Code. Do that. Then I want you to do this. Go to ChatGPT, tell it about your business, ask it, let's say, I'm gonna say what I did yesterday. So ask it, what are all the things I need to have a best-in-class sales function for financial services? And it will tell you all the things that you need. Now, put that in a folder on your desktop and you open Claude or Cursor or whatever Visual Studio and you point Claude Code at that directory and you ask it to make a checklist of all the things it has to build. And then you just hit the go button and it will recursively build your entire sales motion playbook. It was running all last night. I was out at the soccer game. It was running all last night. And because Claude Code is like a more or less of a human coder, but you can use it for other shit. So it built email templates. It built the flow charts. It built uh, lead qualification and scoring playbooks. And it built all these things, like 15 things. I haven't reviewed them all this morning, but you can, so Claude, this is massive. So I would have paid a coach $22,000. I got a quote for this, but I did this in 3 hours. And it chugged away for 6 hours on its own. That is, you could do that for your finance department. You could do it for let's customer service. What do I do for customer service? Ask ChatGPT, give it to Cloud Code. It will build all the artifacts that you could possibly need for your customer service department. So that I just figured that out yesterday.
Wow. Well, that's mind blowing, my
Yeah,
friend. I know
yeah.
a lot of times, I've had a few guests recently talk about AI, and one of the nuances that I've changed is instead of typing things in, I'm trying to talk to it.
Yeah.
In fact, the interview I just had about an hour ago, we talked about how he calls her Luna, right? And I need to figure out a name for my chat, but I love that it's integrating some other things, and there's so many things out there. It's
Mhm.
really cool that this community, right, be it on podcasts or newsletters, these types of things, that we're all learning from each other, so that
Mhm.
these tools can come together and actually become agents for us, and time,
Yeah.
eliminators per se, right? Like you said,
Yep.
and now some people are going to get hurt. Maybe that consultant that would have been 30 grand is getting hurt a little bit, but they'll have to transition in some of the ways
Yeah,
that
they
they do
do.
business as well,
Yeah.
right? So awesome, Matt. Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming on the Go for CEO channel.
This was
It's
awesome.
something that we, have strived to do. I'm coming out with a book called The 4A Formula: Untangle Any
Cool.
Challenge and Think Like a CEO. And from opportunities like this, from my own business entrepreneurship journey, and from my stories, I've been able to develop this book, and super excited to have guys like you to be a part of it. That is part of the wisdom that's downloaded in this book. So, how's the best way to get a hold of you? The website? Are you active on LinkedIn with DMs? What's
Yeah.
some of the ways that if someone sees this and they're like, man, I really want 8X to be my next CFO service, what can they do to connect with you?
LinkedIn's perfect. I'm LinkedIn Matt Putra, so MattPutra. You'll find me there. You could go to our website if you wanted, or you could just email me, Matt at 8x.co, EIGHTX.co. But either email or LinkedIn will work.
All right, brother. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the
Thank you.
GoFCO channel. And by the way, subscribe to the channel. I keep on doing it at the end. I should do more of it at the beginning. But hey,
Totally.
I hope that you've stayed on. There'll be snippets, right? There'll be some 20, 30, 60, 90-second snippets of Matt's wisdom. And that last part, that last 45 seconds that he shared about this AI tool and how to connect them, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention, take some notes, and actually activate, take
Hmm.
action on what Matt said, so that you can improve your systematized, process of your business. So, Matt, thanks so much for coming on the Go for CEO channel.
Thank you, John. This was awesome.